11:01. Let's get started. So first of all, thank you to all of you for joining my good friend Beverly Kaye and I this afternoon for a podcast webinar on the conversation counts, development, leadership, and purpose. And the bottom line is we're going to have a great conversation today with you. Going to invite you, by the way, to ask questions. We'll be taking them throughout, but we won't always take the questions immediately when they come up. But we will be taking questions as we go through the hour together. We've got some content to share with you, and mostly we want to have a lively conversation around development, leadership, and purpose, and how each one of you, whether you have your organizational hat, your individual hat on, or your individual leader hat on, in terms of how we really can develop people and keep the best. We all know we're still in a war for talent. And I always say the best people always have options, and your people can become your best people if you engage them and win them to your cause. So I'm thrilled to have my good friend Beverly here on the phone with us. Although we have known each other a long time, this is the first time we have ever done anything like this together. So excited to be here. And Bev is one of the most fun people I know. And I tell you, she loves the details. I've learned that doing this webinar with her. So anyway, Bev, turn it over to you just to say good afternoon and good morning.
So welcome, everybody. I have to tell you, I am sitting in my brand new office using the computer in my brand new computer for the first time. I recently had the ceiling fall in on my office and cover all my papers, all my books. So we're slowly moving back in again, and I only put a few books on the shelf to show you that I do read books. And, I love that we're doing this in a different way. I love that we're both going to actually present for like 5 minutes each, and the rest of the time we're going to schmooze. And I can't help but see Al Squire came on the phone. Welcome, Al. And John and I have known each other maybe 20 years. We are both in a group called the Learning Network that's been going for 22 years. And it has a lot of thought leaders in it. And we meet once a year and we teach each other. So many of you probably know Marshall Goldsmith and Jim Kouzes. And anyway, those are some of the people, and Ken Blanchard. And it's just a really fun weekend. So John and I at least see each other once a year.
Yeah, indeed. It's been a great gathering all those years. And so Beverly, great to do it. So look, people came this morning to hear us talk about some stuff. So let's get at it. You know, when Beverly and I had a couple of pre-calls doing this, we started collecting some of the words that came up as we were talking about our respective work and our respective most recent, books, which you see there on the screen at the bottom, and we wanted to say a few words about some of these words that came up when we had this conversation. I want to speak about one of the words that came up, Bev, and then you do one, I'll do one. Bev, we were talking about how do you know when you're living your purpose or you're doing what you should be doing in your life, right? Whether it's in your career, in your life. And we each talked about, two words. I love Beverly talked about the smile factor, right? That when you're doing something, that smile comes over your face. Like, I'm actually in this. And I loved that, Bev. And we were talking about, just noticing in your life and in your career when that smile comes over your face. And I talked about Joseph Campbell's word bliss. And, and to me, you're in your bliss when you lose track of time, when you're not aware of just trying to get through it, but you're just aware you're fully in it. And so
Right.
to me, that's how you know you're living your purpose. It's how you know you're doing what you should be doing in your career. Bev, what are some of the words that struck you?
I'll just build on the word bliss for a minute. I am asking people lately to watch for bliss moments and call it and say, right now, this is a bliss moment and here's why. And say it to the person that you're with and say it to yourself. I'm being much more aware of those bliss moments. And John, I'm thinking back to that conversation. At the end, you said, hey, Bev, if we had recorded this, we wouldn't have to do this whole part of it,
Sure.
the seminar. But, the word that jumps out at me is age. And as I age, I am very interested in how are organizations treating their elders. And I think elders have so much to offer. And I've been reading a lot of books on aging, positive aging, and I'm really loving that. And maybe close to age is that word legacy. And maybe, John, legacy is close to purpose.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is.
It's just a great word, being aware of, are you leaving it?
Legacy is a word I love to use when I'm coaching leaders or teams in an executive team in an organization around your purpose. I love to ask the question, what's the legacy that you want to be true of your time in leadership, right?
Right.
And I often have, what's the legacy you want in your family, right?
Right.
And legacy not from an ego perspective, like a statue of you, but like the trail that would be left behind, whether you get credit or not. And I think it's a very powerful word I've found in our lives.
Right. I wrote an article ages ago about legacy, and it started with if a leader fell in the forest, ... How would you know? And you would know by who he left and he or she left and the ideas they left behind. So you're making me rethink of finding that old article.
Another word that struck me, I guess one last one I'd like to talk about is we talked a lot when we were talking about, and we'll talk a lot about that on this session today, about curiosity. And that a lot, whether it's finding your personal purpose or what's important to you in your career, and that about noticing and also getting curious as a leader. So when we think about career development or engaging people, coaching them around purpose, a lot of it is just genuinely being curious about other people. And I have found, Bev, I'm sure you'd agree, the most successful leaders I have found are incredibly curious about the marketplace, curious about people's lives, curious about the impact they're having on customers. So to me, curiosity is such a thing we don't really talk about, but it's an important factor for leaders' success.
Very, and I know in Help Them Grow, we use that. I'll add my last one. Those of you who know me, I was the one who put the word funk up there. Because a year ago, I sold a company that I'd founded and grew for 40 years, and it put me in a funk, and for a long time. And now that I'm out of it and back to the me I know, I'm appreciating that sometimes out of a funk in our lives comes a whole new awakening. And all the books say that, but when I'm in it, you never believe it, right? So funk is important.
It is true, right? And the funk is like, and then we'll kind of get into some more content for people, but funk, I love that word. We all know it when we're in it, right? When you're in a funk. And it's really important to pay attention when you're in a funk, to notice, to get curious, not in a way of judgment of the self, but wonder why I'm in a funk. And when leaders are coaching people, I often say, if you see the person's in a funk, say it. Say, Bev, I've noticed. You seem to be in a funk. You seem to kind of really not fully be yourself. I wonder what's happening for you, right?
Great.
No judgment, just curiosity.
That's great. Right.
So Bev and I are both going to just take a few minutes to put out some foundational concepts. Again, hopefully no more than 5 minutes each. So I'm going to time myself so that I make sure I come under to start. So I want to start with really talking about, obviously, a lot of the work that I'm going to talk about today comes from my most recent book, The Purpose Revolution: How Leaders Create Engagement and Competitive Advantage in an Age of Social Good. But since today our focus is clearly on, the development of people, I want to just talk for a moment about the way that purpose drives engagement, recruitment, and retention in organizations. And I think it's really an undervalued part of the arsenal, if you will, for leaders and organizations. And one of the first points I want to make is to point to some incredibly fascinating research by Amy Rosinski at Yale University that I talk about in my book, among other things, who studied the way people see their jobs. And it turns out that each person sees their job in basically one of three ways. It's either really just a job. I'm here for the money. If I win the lottery tomorrow, I'm probably not going to come back in the morning, or not next week for sure. Second is I see my job as a career, meaning the role I'm in right now is a stepping stone. It's about me learning and growing, building my resume so I can do things I want to do in the future. And finally, seeing my job as a calling, from the Latin word vocatio, meaning there really is a sense in which this job is core to my identity, and I really feel like I'm making a difference in this job. And to me, the two most interesting things about that line of research by Amy and many others now around the world is, first, your job is not a good predictor of how you see your job. So there are custodians who see their job as a calling. There are surgeons who see their job as just a job. The second thing is that in every metric that we care about as leaders, engagement, productivity, customer service, organizational commitment, retention, calling in sick, on every metric we care about as leaders, people who see their job as a calling perform fundamentally better than those who see their job as just a job or as a career. And to me, the seed I want to plant with you today is that purpose makes a huge difference in terms of every metric that we care about as leaders and personally. But the second thing is that since the job is not a good predictor of whether I see my job as a calling, we as leaders have tremendous capability and organizations to help people see their job as a calling, to see the deeper meaning in their job. And so as we can move people down that cycle to move towards a calling, and lots of things we can do as a leader that makes that happen, we're going to get so much more from people. The second point I want to make is that a full 37% of the global workforce are now purpose-focused, meaning the decisions they make about where they go and whether they stay are increasingly driven by purpose. So almost 4 out of every 10 employees. And millennials and baby boomers even higher than that. So if you ask which generations are most purpose-focused, ironically, it's the millennials and the baby boomers at the end of their career. And again, I will hear stories of individuals and companies who are winning people who are the most desirable talent based on purpose, based on, look, you're going to make a difference in this company, in your job. And I want to make two important points there. The first is that I would ask you the question, when you're recruiting, are you recruiting around purpose? When is it really front and center? When you are coaching, are you coaching people around purpose? And the second point that I want to reinforce is that it's interesting that the youngest workers, Gen Z, are actually not as purpose-focused in their choices as the millennials. And it's actually quite an interesting thing that few people know, which is that Gen Z, because they were the children of Gen X, which was a generation that really struggled with job security, that security and purpose compete neck and neck for Gen Z. So you got to make sure you're hitting both of those. Purpose still important to them, but they also are very focused on their career and the career ladder. So make sure that you don't forget that the youngest of the workers are actually not quite as purpose focused as the millennials, their older counterparts. Final thing, and I'm going to talk more about this later, is two things very important for you to do as leaders and organizations. First, to drive job purpose, not job function. And we talk a lot about that in our book. And that is from our job descriptions for how we as leaders talk about the job, talk about the purpose of the job, not just the function. Two great examples. Molly Maid, a client of ours, one of their most successful franchisees, talks to me about how she always talks about, look, you're not just cleaning homes, you are giving people the gift of time, whether it's a busy single mother, a busy couple. You are alleviating loneliness when you go into the home of an elderly client who may not see anyone else for a few days or sometimes an entire week. So how am I talking about that? Am I telling stories about when we're making a difference? And the second thing is, in our recruiting, is purpose front and center. So West Elm, for example, reimagined all their job descriptions towards purpose and had a 30% decline in the number of people who applied for the jobs, but an over 40% increase in the number of qualified candidates they would consider hiring. So in our recruiting, if purpose is front and center, we may actually get fewer people apply, but more of the right people to apply. And the final point I want to make is, as a leader, engaging personal purpose is so important. I plant one more seed, then I'm going to turn it over to Bev, which is, it turns out if you study the impact of organizational purpose and believing in the purpose of your organization versus people feeling they're getting to live their purpose in their job, living their own purpose in the job, a much stronger predictor of engagement and a much stronger predictor of them being a great ambassador for your brand than believing in the purpose of your company. The moral to the story is company purpose matters, but unless I am engaging people around their personal purpose and helping them see how they get to live their purpose in their job, I'm leaving a tremendous amount of impact on the table. So really important to make sure that you are focused on these two things. So Bev, I'm going to turn it over to you for now to go through your slides. And well, I kind of made my 5 minutes. So here, Bev, all over to you.
Great. So, as I listen to you, John, I am sorry we never talked about our work before, because it links to the world of career. And
oh, yeah, definitely.
Everything you said about purpose. And so we definitely have to talk more. So I've got 5 minutes to talk about help them grow or watch them go. And up there is a slide that says develop me or I'm history. I think that's a call from folks who are high potentials and folks who are part of the massive middle. And they're not saying it as a you better. They're saying it as, this is what I really want. This is what means something to me. I want to develop, I want to grow. And those of you out there have seen stats about that constantly. So to do the whole book in 5 slides was a great kind of adventure. So the first slide that I want to put up I'm going to talk about the most important word in each slide. The most important word here is the word talk. And if you can tell my Jersey accent, it's spelled T-A-W-K. And I think we are in desperate need of conversation. And we have seen that word now all over the place. I have several books on conversation. And I think what individuals want is they want their managers to know them. Let's just talk about my interests, you're right, my passion, my work, etc. So throughout Help Them Grow, we talk about that talk. I wish I could say it without the Jersey, but, and we give a lot of questions that you can ask. In fact, on the next slide, where most managers are worried they're worried about, if I open the door, I'm going to have answers. And I don't have answers for myself, let alone my people. And what we're trying to do, as kind of everything I've done with the product side of my career, is make it deceptively simple. I want managers to say, I could do that. And so I want to give them questions. I want to give them questions that they could ask. And if they listen hard enough to the answer to the questions, it will drive them deeper, not wider. So I think gyp sheets are great. And I think our managers are hungry for those questions to ask. Unlike us in HR, we have them up the kazoo, but managers don't. And I think that's really important. So in this book, and I love that the next slide, that my publisher pushes us to write thin books and pushes us to write, I know you were the same publisher for many of you, and he pushes us to have the whole book in the title. Isn't that right, John? And if not the subtitle. If the title doesn't say what the whole book is about, it's the wrong title. So help them grow or watch them go is really my main message. But to help them grow and making it as simple as possible, we're saying there are three skill sets or three abilities that managers need and employees need. And one is hindsight. Hindsight means that I look at myself, the skills I have, the purpose I have, the ideas I bring to the job, and I jot them down, I catalog them. It's like the who am I question. And I think hindsight, thinking about yourself is not enough without getting information from your peers. So hindsight is self-awareness. Hindsight is also awareness from my peers, feedback. And there's so much written on feedback and so much in how to ask for it and how to be non-defensive when it comes. So hindsight is critical. The second is foresight. Foresight means you've got to look into the future, and not just the future of your job and your function and your profession and your organization. It's your industry, it's the world, it's how are things changing. So I'm not pushed over by the change, but I'm in the forefront of it. So forefront takes homework. I think homework that the org has to do and provide. It takes some great conversations with groups about how are we going to meet the needs of the future. And simply it's hindsight, foresight. And it's both of those you need to lead you to insight, which is now, what are my possibilities? And the S on the end of the word possibilities is critical. And then how do I get there? So it comes from actually from the dissertation I wrote many years ago for UCLA. And I just took that theory and plugged it right in here with, of course, my great co-author, Julie Winkle. So the next to last slide I have is a theme song. It's like, and I know we'll talk about it because I wrote another book called Up Is Not the Only Way. And I think I've been saying that forever, that maybe onward and upward isn't possible for everybody, and not everybody wants it. But moving forward and towards something is going to replace onward and upward. And I've been singing that for 40 years. I'm still trying. And finally, I think career development is a powerful tool. And when I look at the word underutilized, I think immediately of inclusion, diversity and inclusion. And I think what everybody wants, diverse players and typical players, whatever, is to know they have a career direction. And I think we forget that career development is what's going to drive engagement. It's going to drive retention, and it's going to drive results. So it's no longer just a nicety, which it was when I started. I think it's now an absolute necessity. I did it in 5 minutes. Ha, John.
All right. Ha. Very good. Excellent. All right. So there we are. So Bev, wonderful. And I want to pick up on two things you said to kind of keep the conversation going. One is this idea of leaders don't have to have the answers when we're coaching people about their careers, to me, is such an important thing, because I think so often leaders think my job is to give people advice about their career, right? So talk just a little bit about that, because I think it's a really important point, actually.
You know, I love that you asked that, because if anything stops a well-meaning manager, it's, oh my gosh, if I open the door, I won't have the answers. And I don't know how to manage my own career, let alone someone else's. So I want to take that burden, because it is a burden. Managers out there are not trained in career coaching, but we could train them in asking some great questions. And the secret there is not just the question, it's listening for the answer. And I read a line somewhere that from somebody else's book that it's the art of the second question. And I translate that into it's going deeper, not wider. And I see so many managers asking a question, say, yes, thank you, and moving on to the next question.
Yeah.
And so our book is filled with great questions. And I happen to love questions. I'm always writing them down. And I'll tell you one of my favorites around career is the question, when was the last time you said, I love my work?
Yeah.
And if you ask that of an employee and they go blank, or they have to reach back.
Right.
Watch their face.
Yeah.
You know, does it smile immediately? It's a smile factor again. So I love that.
Yeah, and you know, this thing about, it comes back to this idea too of curiosity, right? You know, one of the simple things I teach leaders is whether it's in a career conversation or even someone brings you an idea, right? The whole idea of saying, thank you, tell me more, right? You know, I know Marshall, our good friend, always talks about don't add too much value, right? As leaders, we always want to add too much value. People pretty much have the answers within them most of the time. That's why the great therapists, by the way, are ones who ask great questions, right? They're not, by the way, I see another commonality of our work. You know, my ex-business partner used to call me the king of questions, right? Because I'm always asking people questions to get them thinking. And it must be that we're both from the New York area. So we're, you know, it's like, you know, that's kind of a pretty typical thing in New York. We're always asking people questions. Of course, you're a Jersey girl. It doesn't count. So
and come from real curiosity when you ask the question, because that's critical. Indeed. And I just have to say, give a shout out to my daughter who just sent me a note saying, great job, Mom. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, I love that. I saw that there. Hi, Lindsay. Oh, that's great. It's always good to have that. Yeah, it was my daughter. I'm going to have to give her a little, little head.
Yeah, a little.
Hey, why aren't you here? She's probably working somewhere.
And, you know, Bob Kellner made a comment about, like, how do we help people stand out? And I know he's someone working on that very thing. And I think that's connected to purpose. And if you really have passion for that and maybe some coaching, I think you will stand out. So I think that's critical. And so I got a question for you, John.
Yeah, sure.
And like that word, first of all, what is purpose? You know, we throw it around. And how is it different from meaning and all those other great words?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. So to me, purpose is an aspirational reason for being that is, in the case of a company, besides making money, what's your aspirational reason for being that's about making life better for, all your stakeholders, right? But for the individual, I always say purpose is that part of the job that has nothing to do with the extrinsic value you're getting from the job, whether it's money or status, or benefits. It's that part of the job or our work that is really about the intrinsic meaning that it brings to us. And often it is about that sense of the difference that I'm making in the lives of others. And it can be something big or something very small. One of the things that I do in our work is we actually teach leaders to have every person in the organization identify their purpose and have conversations about it. And I always love to tell the story about a big law firm we were working with, and Lisa was the receptionist at the law firm. Like, she was like at the headquarters. And when it came time for her to talk about her purpose, the head of the firm couldn't resist. He said, "Lisa, let me guess. I know what your purpose is. By the way, don't do this as a leader. I know what your purpose is. You're the first impressionist for this law firm. You get to really be the one to set the tone for the whole firm." And I loved her answer. She said, "Well, Bob, you're right. I am the first impressionist, and that means a lot to me. It means a lot to the firm."
That word.
She said, "But since I've gone through this exercise, I've realized my purpose is that I'm a pretty happy and optimistic person. And my purpose in life and my purpose in this job is there are a lot of people in the world who are not happy and aren't optimistic. And so my purpose is that every person interacts with me, whether it's for 30 seconds or 3 minutes, will get a shot of optimism and happiness and will feel better about themselves and about the world because they interacted with me." And what I love about that is that Bob told me it transformed the way he led her. Because now when he walked by the front desk the next day and saw the grumpiest, nastiest client the firm has ever had, and he saw her smiling, he said to her that afternoon, "Lisa, you were living your purpose today at lunch. I saw it. I haven't seen that woman smile in years."
That is great.
And what I love about that is Lisa didn't really even know exactly what her purpose was. In my keynotes, I have people say, with no preparation, "Turn to your neighbor, what's your purpose?" Then I ask them, after they do that, "How many of you felt you roughly got it right?" And about 90% of the hands go up with no preparation. But many people say it was a profound act just to name what I already knew. So I think, Bev, purpose, we all kind of know what it is. It's our reason for getting up in the morning that's bigger than money, bigger than status, bigger than profits. And so a great question. I appreciate you asking it.
And that the very question I asked, and here we go into riffing, made me think about my own purpose. And, when I sold my organization, and I'm still very connected and doing that work with the new owners, but I lost my purpose. And I think that was why I went into such a funk. And as I worked with coaches and everybody, they would say to me, "Well, what are you interested in?" And I have no interest other than my work. "Well, what are your hobbies?" "Well, I have no hobbies." "Well, what about taking a course?" "Nah, none of them look good to me." I really lost my purpose. And when it came back, it took a year. What I tried to redefine myself and reimagine, like our friend Dick Leiter always says. And I came to, in conversations with people, 2 words that I still have to work on. One is I'm a guide on the side. Like, I have great ideas. And I just want to give people great ideas. And the other is I'm also a sage on the stage. Like, I'm really real. And I'm not esoteric, and I'm not any of those things. But those 2 things, I want to keep being a guide on the side, even more than maybe sage on the stage.
Yeah, I love that, Bev. I was thinking, remember the old Disney character Jiminy Cricket? You know, he
Yeah,
would like sit on your kind of shoulder, right?
right.
And it reminds me of what my good friend Duncan Shields says about generally with leaders. And then I want to get to some of these questions because we got some good
Yeah,
questions.
right.
But my friend Duncan Shields says one of the most important things for leaders is you ask, are you Luke Skywalker? Or is it Frodo is the other character, right? Like, are you the one like trying to bring the hero out in someone else, or are you trying to be the hero, right?
Right.
By the way, before we get to the questions, I do want to share something. I'll share it again later, but I know some people often have to leave, so it's really important to at least put this out there where you can see it, so that we are making an offer today for those of you on the webinar, and I don't want to lose it, and that is that if you go to this link, drjohnizzo.com conversation webinar right there. You can sign up to get right away excerpts from both of our books, a number of chapters, great excerpts. And also, Bev and I are offering today, each of us, 5 half-hour coaching sessions on whatever you want to get coached on, right? Your choice for each one of us. So if you want to be in the running for that, let us know. And so anyway, go there if you're interested in knowing more and signing up for those offers. So I'll leave that up for a moment. Bev, let's tackle at least start with a couple of these questions that people have. Do you see one there you want to go at?
Ainsley, put up a couple that you found that I saw go through my little Zoom thing fast. I think a number of people I saw saying, how do leaders talk purpose with their employees? I mean, for some it's a no-no because it's not just purpose in my work, it's purpose in my life. And some people said that, one person actually said, someone asked, managers fear they need to check in with HR before that kind of engagement. And I just want to say to that person, HR is changing. It is changing. They want managers to have those deeper, wonderful conversations. At least I firmly believe that. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm sorry, I was looking at some of the questions. I'll be honest, I was trying to triage the question. A moment of self-disclosure. I was trying to see what some of these.
I know it's hard to do both.
I knew you were adding like value. You wouldn't need me to kind of do a footnote. I see somebody asked a good question here. 2 questions maybe together. How would you trigger employees to think about their purpose and want to really understand it? And somebody asked, how does the Purpose Revolution book relate to the book called The Purpose-Driven Life? Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren, evangelical minister, basically about finding purpose in your life and the role that purpose plays. A lot of resonance between what he talks about on the personal purpose side. Of course, my book is both around personal purpose, but a lot of it is how do you drive it in the organization with employees, customers, and even investors. So how do you really trigger employees to think about their purpose? A couple things. First is ask the question. And if people don't know, well, what's my purpose, say you ask other kinds of questions like Bev asked, when was the last time you loved your job? When you go home on what my grandfather used to call a good tired day, it was worth the effort of coming in today. What gave you meaning? What gave you a sense of, hey, that was worth it? But I would challenge people to think about this. My experience in these keynotes and workshops that I've done, as well as the work we do inside companies, is most people have a strong sense of what their purpose is, but no one has ever asked them to name it. And in the book, we have like a series of questions you ask to get at your personal purpose, right? So that's in there, and it may even be in the excerpts, I'm not sure. But I think the key thing is ask the question. And if you have to, get curious about, well, when you have a good tired day, when you go home with a sense of meaning, when you love your job, not just for the money or what you get from it, what really happened for you. But again, I have a lot of confidence people are able to identify it. Then here's the trick. then start to ask people to start noticing when they get to live it.
Yes.
Because what happens is I say, oh, I got to live that at 2:00 today. I got to live that yesterday. And you start to engage in those kind of conversations, gets really important.
And, when you have that moment, I'm living it, speak it if you can. That's what I'm trying to do much more. This is a bliss moment. This is a great, and I think that's really critical. And for the manager, once you hear a purpose statement, that your job is, how in the world can I build that more into this person's work? That's the key, I think, to help them grow or watch them go. It's listening and how can I? And if you can't figure it out, turn the question over to your employee and say, how can we build that more into your job? I think that, I love it. And, I was just going to say that I want to give a shout out to, I meant to tell you this, to SunTrust Bank. That purpose is really important to them. They have a purpose wall on their executive floor that people add purpose statements to. When a new recruit comes in, top executives talk about their personal purpose and their professional purpose. And they have 500 purpose ambassadors. So you need to chat with them, because I was just there recently, and now my ears are picking up on anyone who uses the word purpose. I want you to know.
Yeah, no, that's great. By the way, Tracy Draper, thanks to Northrop Grumman, said, Tracy, an old friend of apparently Bev's and mine, worked both of us at Northrop Grumman. Thanks for the shout out. It's nice for us to be together. So thanks for doing that. And hi, Tracy. One of the things that, Bev, I want to talk about, so somebody said something here that riffed that for me, right? So I have a comment, and then I'm curious about something from you. I think when it comes to purpose, leaders sharing their own personal purpose is really important. I'm thinking, Tracy, of all those events I did at Northrop Grumman. I think I did about 70 events over a short number of years. And if you remember, at the one thing, we always had the executive in residence would come, an executive in residence would come and speak the night before. And one of the things I noticed is those executives who really shared their personal purpose, even that wasn't the instruction, but talked about the real difference they felt they were making in their job. Those leaders were always rock stars, like the rest of the event. Those leaders who came in and just talked about the business or, it really didn't make a difference. And the other thing I noticed, Bev, is that those leaders who talked about their own career journey, yes, in an authentic, vulnerable way made a huge difference. So I've certainly seen it with purpose. Talk about the role of leaders talking about their own career journey. When is it just being a narcissistic, and when is it adding value for leaders to talk about their own career journey in your mind?
And just to build on that, we talk forever.
You would run out of time, but go ahead.
The book, a recent book was Up Is Not the Only Way. That's my shtick. Yeah. And always when I'm facing a large audience, small audience, doesn't matter, I will take the 6 different ways to move and I'll say, raise your hand if you've made that move. Mm-hmm. And one of them is, of course, enrichment. A lot of people raise. One of them is realignment. I moved down to get across to here. One of them is lateral. Of course, people know what that is, but they're unique moves. One of them is exploratory. One of them, and I say, raise your hands if you've made this move in your career. Everybody raises their hands. And then I say, have you told your employees that story? Have you shared it at all? Yeah. That you moved down, it was the best move you ever made before you went up. So the story right about their own career is absolutely critical.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. Well, we got a ton of questions coming in here, so I'm just going to rattle some off. Let's see if we can get to some of them here. Joanne, why are managers fearful of employees with great ideals or knowledge, and then they use their ideals as theirs? Bev, quick answer. We'll do this like the lightning round on Mad Money. Quick answer.
Right. If it's a good idea, I'm going to take it. say some managers. And you know, what's interesting is when someone, and I just came back from the I4CP conference, and one of the speakers said, as she kind of pleaded with us, if you're a woman, this was and you say something and you're ignored and someone else says the same thing, you need to say, I just said that. And she asked, how many of you in the audience would say, I just said that? And you know, truthfully, not a lot of people raise their hands because that's hard. That's hard.
Great question here from Gwen. How can this be justified to C-level, the value for frontline managers with many reports to redirect some of their administrative duties to have these valued conversations? I get it, but in a world of working lean, how do you do so? Bev, I'll take a quick answer, then you do the same. First, I think you have to reinforce for leaders that this doesn't always take a lot more time. One of the things Bev talks about in her book, I talk about in my work as well, is having short, frequent conversations instead of these long, lengthy conversations. So integrate it into the work, right? Integrate it into the rounds that you're already doing. The second thing is, that's why I spend a lot of time showing leaders the power of engagement, retention, recruitment, productivity around people connecting to their purpose and connecting to what matters to them. So we have to see the level of investment that we're getting. And one of the things you can do in your organization is start tracking, do some experiments, get leaders to do this in one part of the company, then measure the impact. We've done that in companies, and people are often blown away by the results. So you got to show them the facts, and then you got to show them how to do this in short bursts, not in lengthy, long conversations, not about having appointments.
Right. You know, we have a whole section in Help Them Grow that says there are clues and cues that will push you into a 1-minute career conversation. You know, be aware of them. And, you know, I have a slide that has all the cues, and then the words go out the door because we ignore them as we wait for the career conversation, you know, the IDP conversation. But I think we have to jump on those cues and clues. I'll give you one quick example. Someone turns in a paper, a study, and says, boy, am I glad that's done. Most leaders take it and say, yeah, it's a great job like you always do, or something like that. I would like a leader to say, what is the part that you're most glad is done? You know, or what is the part of the whole paper that you most enjoyed doing? Quick conversation gives me a clue and a cue to that person. And we have to help managers jump on those opportunities. And then as an individual, I feel heard and valued. And that is a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's some really interesting tools out there now as well. One of our partners, Imperative, who we've worked with, who have developed a way for people to track whether they're living their purpose, and then the team can kind of like actually the manager can track how the team is doing, right? And so, you know, happy to talk to some folks about that. Wow, lots of questions coming in here. So Bev, you see something you want to tackle, go for it.
Mika said, what are the other ways to move? And let me give you an easy way to remember. I think, and it's different than in the new book, it's the words are cooler. But the easiest way to tell me is you need leverage. Leverage in your career choices. And it stands for lateral, enrichment, vertical, exploratory, realignment, and relocation. LEVERR. And maybe that's the easiest way to remember it. And enough is not the only way. And again, glad to give you more information. I think we have to look at all 6.
Great.
And
absolutely.
you know, John, just as a PS, I have said that in the book I wrote in the 1982, you know, and I'm still saying it like, why? I don't know.
I'm laughing because it tracks Bev. We both have been saying it, right? So Greg, hi Greg, said, John, how does your purpose work map onto your previous work, the five thieves of happiness and the five secrets you must discover before you die? And I was thinking, like, my whole life since Awakening Corporate Soul in 1993 has been about helping people discover their purpose, discover the source of their happiness, the source of their meaning, right? Happy people are successful people. Happy people are productive people who add value to the world. Sorry, a phone is ringing here, and nothing I can do about it. So it'll go to voicemail. And then the second thing is, my wife Janice always says, I can't believe people pay you to tell them this stuff. This is people should have learned from their grandparents, right? And I'm sure, Bev, sometimes you feel that way after 20-something years of doing this. Be curious about people. Have a purpose bigger than making money. Be authentic. Share your story, right? And fortunately for Bev and I, common sense is almost never common practice. So I do feel sometimes, Bev, like, but it's hard because people are busy. And as someone said before, all these other things that people have on their plate, right? And to prioritize this, that's part of the secret, I think. And once leaders do, it becomes a source of great reward for them as well. They enjoy their jobs more, and while they find out they get more from people.
It reminds me of another purpose thing that it hit me. I am all about making the complex simple. And I remember, after my doctorate, I wanted to be much more, intellectual and professorial and quote all this research, and I realized my gift is, how do you make it palatable? How do you make it easy? And it's appreciating your own gifts and naming them. And I think it doesn't come easy. Mm-hmm. Sometimes someone else has to say to you, here's your gift. Yeah. And then you say, oh no. But isn't that a sad way to receive a compliment too?
Yeah, when you said that, Bev, I love what you said about sometimes it's our job to do that. I've often said, somebody asked a question, Ninika Norman said, and I apologize if I pronounced your first name wrong, how would you recommend people to find their purpose? And again, in the book, lots of ideas. But think about those moments where you have had the greatest source of meaning, the moments when you feel you've lost track of time, whether it's in work or outside of work, where you really feel like you were fully present and made a difference. But the other interesting thing, to me about this is that, again, just to be noticing. I remember a friend of mine was really struggling with his purpose years ago, and a coach said something I thought was profound. She gave him the assignment to go to an art museum in the city that he lived in, and said, I want you to do nothing but to walk around the museum and notice what you notice. When you see a painting that really strikes you, stay there and ask yourself why that painting called to you. And I've found that just the being attentive, and I think the greatest gift a leader or a parent can give to their child or someone who reports to them is to notice when their eyes light up.
Yes.
And to say, wow, you were in your moment, in your element, on that project, in that assignment, in that moment today.
And notice when their eyes...
Hold that mirror up.
Right. I was saying, notice the opposite. It doesn't, you don't look like you're loving that. Or like it's painful for you. And that will give you something. And I love that Al Squire said, when you're doing something that reflects your work, it doesn't feel like work. And that's exactly. So if we want people to do more, then help them find that. And Al Squire gave me a wonderful gift recently, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. He was in something I did in his 20s. He's now in his 50s. And he found it was a values instrument. And come to think of it, that was my way of talking about purpose. And he remembered that the values at that time in his life were all red. We used to have people put stickers on their values. And it said to him, maybe this isn't right for you. And I don't remember him, I don't remember it, now, I love him and for reminding me of the power of identifying. It could be value slash, purpose. I think that's all connected. So thank you, Al.
Yeah, great question. Comment from Chad. How realistic is it to shape your organization's purpose to that of your members' purpose? Is it worth polling members for their purpose, et cetera? Really good questions. I want to address that for just a second. First thing is, in most companies, the purpose is already there. It's about finding it, right? So when you ask your team members to say, what's our purpose and where do you find purpose? You often can uncover your purpose. But let's make a quick distinction here. The organization has to have a purpose that is the intersection between its values and the world's need. That's how a company finds its purpose. The intersection between your capability and gifts and the world's need, right? And the things you're passionate about. That may or may not align with the employees. You can't poll for purpose, right? But on the other hand, having people identify their personal purpose and then ask, how does it link to the purpose of the company? How do you live this in your job? So I would not recommend finding purpose by simply polling everyone, although I have had some companies that I've worked with that have done that and have discovered the deeper purpose that was already there. So don't devalue the employee's sense of what the purpose is. But most of the time, that's not something leaders can just give to thousands of people. Tell us what our purpose is. That is an act of leadership. Why are we here? What are we trying to do? Can be informed by employees, but you can't poll to find purpose, in my view. But you've got to know individuals' purpose and tackle that. Bev, we only got a few minutes left, so we're going to have to take off the questions. Go ahead.
First time that you and I have done this, I'd love any feedback, like, did you like this better than showing slides for the hour? And if so, why?
Yeah,
love that.
So Bev, I'm doing two things. One is I'm going to put that offer back up on the screen, and I'm going to give each of us a chance here just to make some closing comments. So let me put that back up on the screen so we have that there. And again, if you want to get the chapters, go there. If you want to sign up to be in the running for the coaching, Bev, give you a chance for just a 1-minute closing comment, then I'll make a closing comment and we'll be respectful of people's time. So go ahead.
Care about your own career and care about the careers of people around you. Even if they're not your direct reports or not their family, care about, are they working to their passion and purpose? Stop and notice.
And Bev, very quickly, what's your purpose at this point in your life and career?
I'm into redefining it. I think my purpose is helping people connect to who they need to connect to and to what they love. I think it's always been.
Great, wonderful, fantastic.
And you?
So, my purpose, I have two purposes. First is to accelerate the shift of consciousness necessary to do my part in helping accelerate the shift of consciousness necessary for humanity to survive, over these next several hundred years. A lot of my work right now is about nurturing companies to become more purposeful and leaders to add more value to the world, and at the individual level to help individuals find their deepest sense of purpose and to find the greatest amount of happiness they can in their lives. So I have kind of these two compatible purposes. First, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to encourage you to sign up, and we'd love to give away those coaching sessions to up to 5 people and also give you those chapters. Second, I want to thank my friend Beverly for being the amazing person and gifted leader that she is. And Bev, this was fun, and we ran out of time as I anticipated. Finally, I want to say what I say at the end of every one of my keynotes around purpose, which is if you can't live your purpose right now in the role or work that you are doing, you owe it to your life, to your organization, if you work for one, to either find a way to live it where you are or to find a place to sing your song. As you know, Beverly, I went on sabbatical a couple of years myself because I was losing that sense of purpose And I thought of an old Indian poet from India, has a 2-line poem that I love. He said, "The song I came to sing is left unsung. I spent my life stringing and unstringing my instrument." And Bev and I are both too old at this point, too advanced to not to give you the advice. Now is the time to live your purpose. Now is the time to do what you feel called to do. Don't wait any longer to move towards what's important to you. Life is too short not to do that. Bev, final word. I'll let you go. High five.
Very good.
Anyway,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for joining us, and thank you again for your time. We will be sending out a link to the webinar for those of you who were here today, so you can share it with others and get to listen to it again. So Beverly, thank you. You're amazing. And thank you, Ainsley and Lindsay, for helping us today. And thank you to all of you. And we're going to end the meeting now. So thank you again. Bye now.